P. Diddy and Jay Z all of a sudden find themselves lumped together and accused of the sexual abuse of a 13-year-old girl in a civil lawsuit. But Diddy is also locked up, charged in a massive criminal indictment and RICO case. And tonight, a big development as prosecutors drop the charges against Diddy's alleged drug mule. What does this mean for Diddy? Meanwhile, Jay Z has been accused of paying off former clients of the lawyer who was representing his accuser. It's a bizarre twist in this case, which is getting even more nasty. Tonight, we have the latest. But first, he went to a prestigious private prep school in Maryland, attended Penn, an Ivy League school for his undergrad and postgrad degrees. His family's wealth is in the 1% of the 1%ers. Yet despite all these advantages, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione sits in a jail facing the possibility of life without the possibility of parole. Now, Mangione has been charged with terrorism in New York for the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Tonight, how overwhelming is the evidence, and can prosecutors actually prove this was terrorism? All this as we talk about all the latest in the United Healthcare CEO murder case. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And yes, we're talking about the biggest true crime investigation, which is now in our system of justice, moving towards a potential trial. And think about where we are right now. There's a long road ahead for this defendant, Luigi Mangione. Right now, he's still sitting in Pennsylvania, waiting to be extradited back to New York, where he'll land likely in Rikers Island. Not a nice place. Much different than the rest of his life. Prep school, Ivy League, San Francisco, beachfront in Hawaii. I mean, that's the life that he led up until this change in his outlook on life. If in fact he's the one that did it, if in fact we can believe what he wrote in his manifesto. But that's where we are, and it's a long road, because once you get to New York, that's just the beginning of that case. And how will that case evolve? Well, no one knows for sure, but of course we'll be following every step along the way. Now, this is a case where I believe there's a lot of evidence, but it's not a mountain of evidence, it's a mountain range of evidence. I've never seen anything like it. You name it, they got it. You want direct evidence? I got a video of the murder. You want direct evidence? I got a confession in a written manifesto. You want some nice circumstantial evidence? How about I throw some fingerprints at you? How about some ballistics? Yeah? How about some surveillance video as well? You want that? How about some potential DNA? The murder weapon. All of it. Like I mean, everything that you could want. And I'm trying to imagine what the defense could say, because they always pick on the one thing that you don't have when you're a prosecutor like I was. I don't even know if they have that, right? Now, for Mangione, where is he now? He's an accused terrorist. That's the twist now. And that's what took this up to a first-degree murder case. That's what took this up to the possibility of life without parole for Luigi Mangione. Now, is he or isn't he a terrorist? It may be up to a jury, or it may be up to each side to battle it out in court. But right now, that is the accusation. That's as serious as it gets in New York, a city with a history tied to terrorism. You remember? Yeah, I remember. A little different than this, though. And I think that's something that the defense may seize on, but the prosecutor being very, very aggressive here, because Brian Thompson was assassinated. He was a CEO of a big corporation. They were having a meeting in New York. He's not a government official, but he was a big deal, like a really big deal. And the impact of this and the reaction to this is what I believe has really pushed prosecutors to accuse this 26-year-old of engaging in terrorism. So there's a lot of evidence to go through in this case, so let's put it up there. I made a little bit of a list for you tonight, so you can follow along all of this, purported evidence, potential evidence. But we've seen some of it. It seems pretty compelling. Let's begin with the surveillance spottings of the suspect. This is how you can track where he is at all different times based upon what he's wearing, whether he reveals his face. Entering the New York City via the Port Authority bus terminal, checking in at that hostel, exiting the subway at 57th Street, buying food at Starbucks. The shooting itself is on video outside the Hilton, riding a bike on 85th Street, and exiting New York City via the Port Authority bus terminal. You know, from when he gets there to when he leaves, they've got it. They've got everything from that day and beyond. Now, let's take a look at the confiscated items consistent with the crime. Ghost gun was found on him. A silencer was found on him. The fake ID was found on. As a matter of fact, he used the fake ID to identify himself to Pennsylvania police officers. Now, the next two, wow, a manifesto and a to-do list. Manifesto is a fancy way of saying confession, because it's basically an admission to engaging in this and why he's doing it. The to-do list tells us his thinking on how he was going to execute his plan. And then you've got his mask and the clothing as well, which is all consistent with what you see on the video. And you've got some other evidence, you know, but wait, there's more. Fingerprint matches from some things that he purchased on video at Starbucks. The shell casings that with the markings on them, handwritten shell casings. The backpack, the very distinctive, very expensive backpack, the designer backpack. The cell phone that was left in the alleyway. Other things is, you know, you look at his conduct, what was going on in his world, in his life. He went off the grid. He was kind of off the grid for months before this. So much so that his mother had called San Francisco to report him as a missing person. Totally cutting off from friends, family, and the world. Focused, perhaps, if he's the killer, on what he did. And then his social media presence as well. Also part of the evidence when you read between the lines of what he's posting. So there it is, folks. There's my mountain range. If you look at it. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight live in studio, criminal defense attorney, entertainment attorney, former assistant DA in Atlanta, never had this much evidence, Daryl Cohen. Also with us, criminal defense attorney and law professor Meg Strickler. Wow. And look at this, criminal defense investigator, best in the business, Charles Middlestat. All right, where do we start? Like, this is a mountain range, Daryl.
Let's get rid of the mountain range and use a microscope, because the DA's office is going to have fun, if you can call this type of horrible murder, assassination fun. They're going to have our defendant, Luigi, who at some point is going to be making pizza for the other inmates. But before that, they're going to have everything that he did and target it in front of the jury, piece by piece by piece. He laid it out. The one thing the defense has is a guilty client.
Yeah. Meg, have you ever had a case where the other side presented all these different types of evidence,
Yes.
like everything you need?
Yes.
And they did it even without an FBI undercover informant, right?
Yes. Well, what I think of when I see this case and is a mental illness issue, and then if this prosecutor is going to play hardball, which we kind of think she is the way she's been talking, but if there's any way to get some talking to her, get a mental health evaluation while he's in jail, get some background on who he is. This could have been some really awful manic episode. Look, I don't speak mental health in the sense of I'm a lawyer, I'm not a psychologist. But when you are really off the rails, so to speak, you already said he was off the grid.
He was.
He was off the rails. And I'm not condoning what he did, but what I'm saying is there could be some discussions in the years to come before we go to trial about his mental health status and how he got there and why this happened versus him intending to be a terrorist and to go kill this person.
Charles, when you get cases, I know sometimes you'll dig up evidence, right? Sometimes you'll question or look at what prosecutors have and kind of delve into it? What are you seeing here? Is there room for the defense to even go down that road of they may not have the evidence to prove this?
No. I mean,
That was quick.
I mean, clearly, we're no longer talking about a whodunit, right? I mean, that's off the table. The issue is, and by all appearances, he wasn't looking to get away with this, right? I mean, he went off the grid. All of his conduct leading up to this, his conduct during, I mean, he did this in one of the largest cities in the world that's full of surveillance video. That's why we have this mountain of surveillance evidence. He didn't dispose of the murder weapon. He had a distinctive designer backpack. He had the same clothing. He had the confession. He had all this stuff. These aren't the actions of someone that was literally trying to get away with it. He knew he was going to get caught. He wanted to take credit for this. He had engraved on the shell casings, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not so much we're no longer talking about a whodunit. The question is why and what was going on in his mind that led up to this. So from my perspective, in terms of my role, it would be more of a mitigation effort at this point to try to understand, you know.
You've got to uncover his life and his world and his mental status.
Have to humanize him for a jury at some point.
I think the only chance he has of receiving life with the possibility of parole, dropping it from first to second degree, is to humanize him, as Charles said, have him examined over and over again, psychologists, psychiatrists, and let them know that he needs to know what was in his mind.
And what I'm hearing from all of you is much different than what the public is saying, the ones who are sympathetic to him. They are more about villainizing the victim. That's not gonna be a part of this case. You're not gonna go.
I have a suspicion there's gonna be a history of mental health problems. He's 26. That's when these things happen.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so there's gonna be a history of other signs. And I mean, you can be very, very smart and graduate from Penn.
So what you've got to do, though, I guess, is track down people who were in his world in the last year before all this happened, who maybe can observe and talk about what was going on.
Right. If I were representing him, and I would not want to, but if I did, I would not only have the people from the past year, but his earlier life to show the difference in the way he was,
contrast,
as opposed to the way he is.
I don't understand the comment, but I wouldn't want to. You're a defense lawyer, but
I don't represent everybody.
I think the issue, which you touched on a moment ago, with regard to this undercurrent of hostility and against the CEOs, against the victim, et cetera. I mean, it's a real thing, right? And it's not something that the defense is going to ignore, particularly during jury selection. I mean, obviously, they would hope to get 1 or 2 or 3 jurors on there that had those sort of strong sentiments. And that's just the reality of what we're dealing with here. I mean, that's the place, jury selection, not during the course of the trial where you're going to try to villainize this victim. Trying to villainize.
Let's do this. Let's move on to another big part of this story and this case right now, which is the fact that he's been charged with terrorism in New York. Take a look. Act of terrorism involving a violent act and acts dangerous to human life that were in violation of the criminal laws of the state and were intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Those are the magic words, I think, here. Intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policies of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion. We're not talking about the government here. Affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. I don't think that's it. You know, I know insurance is regulated, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about intimidating, coercing a civilian population. Take a listen at the press conference where they're announcing these charges. They're taking some time to sort of explain their reasoning behind all of this.
And let me be perfectly clear. In the nearly 2 weeks since Mr. Thompson's killing, we have seen a shocking and appalling celebration of cold-blooded murder. Social media has erupted with praise for this cowardly attack. People ghoulishly plastered posters threatening the CEOs, other CEOs, with an X over Mr. Thompson's picture, as though he was some sort of a sick trophy. And yesterday, the New York Post reported that some extreme activists were circulating a deck of cards with other most wanted CEOs to be targeted for assassination. These are the threats of a lawless, violent mob who would trade in their own vigilantism for the rule of law that protects us all.
And we've seen a real increase, sustained increase since December 4th in concern, not just from CEOs, but from corporations broadly. And so going back to the DA's point, the intent to intimidate or coerce the civilian population, which is, of course, at the root of our state terrorism statute, is very much borne out in this reaction, and for good reason.
Take a look. They're talking about the reaction to all of this, right? So if you look at what people are saying on social media, he's a hero. Free Luigi is a hashtag that is trending. This is, I don't know if I've seen something quite like this. At least recently, I haven't seen it. Like someone who's on video committing cold-blooded murder, engaging in assassination, and becomes a hero. Now, take a listen now to what folks are saying online.
People who keep wondering why we regard Luigi Mangione as a hero, we don't. We see him as the symbol he is and a time that he's needed. If you don't believe me, check this out.
Luigi single-handedly brought us together and united us in the U.S. And I hope he understands that.
It's funny how there's people out there that are happy that the guy who shot the healthcare CEO got arrested today, when that CEO guy probably killed way more people than the guy who shot him. I mean, this guy basically became the modern-day Martin Luther King. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's statues of him in the near future or something.
What do you think about Luigi Mangione?
Up in the air about it.
Why is that?
Because he killed someone, but I can understand part of his...
What do you think about Luigi Mangione, the CEO assassin?
I think he's cool.
This whole corporate capitalist takedown is just...
Luigi Mangione doesn't even know that he is a national phenomenon right now. Like, he doesn't even know how loved he is.
And right now, it feels like we're all united. At this point, it's the people against the CEOs.
Even though the guy got caught, which is very unfortunate, at least he left a very powerful message, and he highlighted how terrible the healthcare system is in America. I think he'll go down as a hero in history.
So thank you, Luigi, for your service, because America is coming back together.
I do know the DA is going to try to bounce as many young jurors as possible off the panel. But let's talk about terrorism. Meg, do you believe that Mangione's intent was to coerce the civilian population to take up his cause, to go after other CEOs? Or do you think his intent was to intimidate the civilian population of CEOs and people in healthcare companies, people who work for insurance companies and other big corporations?
The problem the prosecutor faces by choosing to do this is overcharging. And we see that all over in national cases like this one. She's taking this case, and you just read the statute itself, and there's case law that already exemplifies all the different parts of that statute. There's not enough to get to this level here to have him convicted of that. And so it's dangerous, in my opinion, to charge that. I don't think she should have. I think she should have kept it at second degree and just get the conviction we all know is coming, because we have that mountain range of evidence. But to overcharge, you're now going to get the other part, that jury nullification, and they're going to be like, you know what? We're going to find him not guilty. Dangerous.
I don't like the fact that he was charged with first degree with terrorism, but I understand why it was done, because that's the only way to keep him incarcerated. If he's convicted, if he enters a plea, keep him incarcerated until the day he dies. So I don't agree that this is terrorism because it was targeted, and that's a good thing in some ways because the public wasn't worried there was this crazed gunman out there that could kill anyone. In fact, he was targeting. But as I say, I'm concerned because I don't think it's terrorism, but I do want to see him incarcerated for the rest of his natural life.
Does this strike you as terrorism?
I mean, again, this seems like a reaction to the public sort of reaction,
yeah,
right?
It's a reaction to the reaction, absolutely.
Which honestly, I don't know why we're surprised. I don't know why there's so much outrage. This is just a continuation of justifications. Mangione justified his actions based on some weird ideology that he developed. The people that are reacting to it are justifying his actions based upon their own projections of injustice within, whether it's just healthcare or something else. How is this any different than the people that were cheering on the insurrectionists, the aggravated ones, the ones that actually committed violence against police officers, and they're seen as heroes when they actually were undermining democracy, and those people were on social media being hailed as heroes and have been, and where's the outrage, right? This is what people on social media do. They feed off of each other, and it's as wrong as is.
Oh, it's beyond social media. I mean, they're putting up posters in New York, like wanted
it's
photos.
just,
so it's manifesting itself.
It's wrong.
Let me ask you this,
egregious.
Though. It's first degree, right? It's terrorism. Does this, and this is what I think is really going on, I think the DA went here so they could offer second degree as a plea.
Agree.
Which I think is going to backfire. It's going to backfire.
I don't agree with Meg. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to end up entering a plea or a trial, and he'll be convicted of second degree.
Yeah,
I disagree
but
with Meg.
if you charge him with second degree, there is no plea to offer other than to the charges. Now, the prosecutor can say, listen, I'm giving you this offer. The defense attorney, nod, nod, wink, wink, can go to his client and say, listen, there's a lot of evidence. Vinnie Politan said there's a mountain range of evidence in this case. You're not going to win. There's a chance you can lose and never get out. You can get out if you take this plea for second degree. I think that's what's going to happen. I don't know what's in his mind. I don't know if he wants to be in a courtroom and get on the witness stand and make a speech.
Well, unfortunately, he's not going to get the mental health care he needs. He's just being, he's getting whatever drug to get him to be quiet and not do anything. Whatever the Haldol is of today, he's taking that in the jail. They're not dealing with his mental health. So what's going to happen while he's in jail? Is he really going to last 20 years, 30 years? Or is it going to be a Jeffrey Epstein thing?
I don't know.
Happening?
He's young, though. He's young.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a chance. There's a chance that he could get out because he's only 26. He's not older. All right.
Let's keep in mind, this investigation's still ongoing. They may uncover evidence that he had a secondary target, a third target. I mean, he may have had a hit list.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be shocked if this was his only, sort of
hit
only
list.
target.
I think the terrorism is done.
Then it's different. Then everything changes.
All right, think tank staying with us. Coming up next, we're going to talk about P. Diddy, some big developments there, plus coming up next hour. Coming up tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Corey Richins was working at Home Depot when she met Eric Richins, a successful businessman in Utah. They fell in love, got married, and started a family with 3 little boys. Now, Eric is dead, and Corey is charged with his murder.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
Now, as we go back in time, before Diddy was charged by that prosecutor, that U.S. attorney in New York, there was a raid of his homes. And at the time of the raid of his homes, there was another person, an associate of his, as they refer to them in legal terms, a man named Brendan Paul, who was arrested. Here he is. That's his mugshot. He was arrested down in Florida. Diddy has property in Florida, has property out in California, has property all over the place. But those were the two main sites where the searches were taking place. And then Brendan Paul, an associate, was really the first one to be arrested at Miami Airport. Take a look. So he was found with marijuana and cocaine-laced gummies in his bag. Both were felonies in Florida, so he was taken into custody. And as soon as this happened, the first thing we're talking about, okay, this is how it begins, right? First, you go after some people who are associated with Diddy, and then you kind of work your way up. Now, there are other allegations against Brendan Paul. Take a look. This is from a lawsuit filed, a civil lawsuit filed by Lil Rod. Brendan Paul, allegedly, according to the civil lawsuit, works as Mr. Combs' mule. He acquires and distributes Mr. Combs' drugs and guns. Brendan Paul would negotiate the fees the sex workers received and would ensure that the workers are paid. Paul participated in recruiting, enticing, harboring, transporting, providing, obtaining, advertising, maintaining, patronizing, or soliciting by any means a person to engage in illegal sex acts. So he was charged with being sort of a drug mule, but the allegations in the civil suit go way beyond that. Paul was originally charged with possession of cocaine and marijuana. He later entered a plea deal requiring him to enter into a diversion program. Upon completion of this program, his charges were now formally dropped. So, what does this mean? Back with our think tank, Daryl Cohen, Meg Strickler, and Charles Middlestat.
There's a great song, Rolling on the River. I can feel him rolling. I can feel the testimony. I can hear it coming. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I have to tell the truth under oath.
He proffered to get out of his own pickle. It's obvious.
Right, because in the Diddy lawsuit, there's allegations of RICO, right? This organization. Well, an organization needs people to do some of the work. Seems like he would potentially, if you believe the allegations in the civil suit, be a main person in all this.
Well, my guess is, and look, I'm only guessing here because there's a lot of salacious stuff being stated in civil lawsuits, and some of these things are crimes. So we don't know what's really known by law enforcement yet. But this gentleman probably got caught with those gummies and said, look, you know what, like we just said, he's rolling on the other guy. He proffered up evidence to get out of what he did. But then he's like, well, you know what, actually. And so he gave up more information. And so that's why his case was dismissed. That is the nature of our criminal justice system. I can't tell you how many drug trafficking cases that I've seen do that. It's all about doing that.
What's interesting here is it was a state prosecution down in Florida, but the case against Diddy we know is a federal case, Charles.
Right. Yeah, so to me, the sort of the mechanics of it would be odd. You got a state case, you got a federal case. If he's cooperating, usually his case would not be resolved until he's actually completed his cooperation, right? They would defer the sentencing until he's actually completed that, until he's delivered the goods, right? In this case, maybe there is a situation where either they already have enough other co-conspirators that are unindicted co-conspirators that are cooperating, that they don't need him, or there's simply an understanding, not a formal arrangement, a formal plea, whereby it's understood that, hey, we're just going to let this state case take its course, but we count on you cooperating. And actually, it kind of makes him a more pristine witness, because now it looks like he's not doing it for benefit, right?
So Diddy we just found out this week, he's got a laptop now, so he downloads the discovery. He can't go online, but he can read all the discovery, during the course of the day while he's locked up. What is the defense doing? Is Diddy's defense here, do you think it's being proactive, like going out and trying to figure things out, or are they just being reactive and looking at the evidence that prosecutors have?
Well, a couple things. I can tell you from experience, the laptop that he's getting at the jail, he gets limited time while he's there, and this laptop is from 1912. So it is not the posh laptops that he would have had if he'd been out in his mansion. So he's looking at stuff, but understand, sex and stuff is alleged here, so he's not going to have access to those parts, those videos, those horrible videos that are alleged.
So he doesn't get to look at the videos?
Well, he never will.
Only if they're underage.
Only if they're underage?
Only if they're underage. If not,
Correct.
he absolutely does have
but
access to
there's
them.
a lot of allegations of younger people.
Right.
That's why I mentioned that.
I would disagree. I think he's got plenty of access. I mean, the one thing they don't want to do is deny him his right to counsel, his right to assist in his own defense.
They are awful.
They're putting him in a conference room.
Nope.
He gets special treatment. He gets his own conference room, and he is getting ample time to review that.
I disagree. Because what about all the other defendants? It's not going to be okay.
I agree with Charles. It's 1-2 on this one. I absolutely think he is getting all the access and more than he needs. And do I think they're being proactive or reactive? The answer is yes, to both.
Gotcha.
To both.
Now, another twist here. Thomas Jufra, the attorney representing 3 of Diddy's male accusers, joined CNN and discussed a similarity between Diddy and another infamous figure in the entertainment world. Let's watch.
Whenever you have a serial abuser, they follow a pattern. Harvey Weinstein had a pattern. Sean Combs has a pattern. And with all 3 of them, the stories are a little different, but the pattern's always the same. Come into my orbit, have a drink, you get woozy, take a rest, wake up to being sodomized. That was the pattern. And it was the same in every single story.
Okay, so what do you think of the comparison between, and it's, you know, they're both in New York, both, you know, big-time people in their industries. Diddy, a lot wealthier and younger at this point. What do you think of that comparison in the way Diddy is accused of doing what he did versus what Weinstein was
Why
doing?
didn't he bring up Bill Cosby? Because Bill Cosby was alleged and convicted of some of these things of spiking drinks. So it was interesting he didn't bring that one up, because Harvey Weinstein, that's not a similar storyline. There was no roofies in this storyline.
You're talking about just, I mean,
you're
talking about someone who's using power and influence to force an outcome, to get their will, to manipulate people, to silence people, to create access, to engage others to do some of your bidding. I mean, I don't know that you need to make comparisons to figure out that if these allegations are true, it's because of his incredible wealth and power that he commands.
Let me ask you this, because I don't know. It always shocks me, right, that we're here now, and he's there, and he may never get out, like Diddy, a guy who had everything, made himself into this billionaire. 0 to 10, how shocked are you? Like, take it before he was ever accused of anything, because that's where I go back to. I'm at like 9 on this. Where are you?
I'm at
just give me a number.
11 plus.
11 plus.
I'm 9 as well.
I mean, I'm not that shocked because we've heard rumors for years, right? The question is how much of this is going to stick. I mean, look, we're in the first quarter of this.
Well, thing. If you're an 11 on that, you're probably a 15 on this. When we come back, we're going to talk about Beyonce's husband, Jay Z.
As I said, our law firms have been retained by 120 individuals at this point to pursue cases in civil court against Sean Diddy Combs. And I want to focus on the ages of these victims. When we talk about the ages of the victims when the conduct occurred, it's shocking. Our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old. We have an individual who was 14 years old. We have one who was 15. 25 of the 120 individuals who are plaintiffs in these cases were minors at the time of the acts complained of.
And one of those minors, who was 13 at the time, 24 years ago, is not only going after Diddy, but going after Jay Z as well. So now this attorney representing that minor, Tony Busby, going after Diddy and Jay Z together. Let's take a look at the allegations there. It's graphic, but it's what they're alleging. Combs then threw the plaintiff, who's the 13-year-old, toward a wall, causing plaintiff to fall. Plaintiff got up and stumbled, at which point Combs grabbed her again and threw her on the bed. At that point, Carter, that's Jay Z, began removing plaintiff's clothes as she grew more and more disoriented. Plaintiff was held down by Carter as he vaginally raped her while Combs and Celebrity B, a female Celebrity B, watched. After Carter finished, he stepped back towards the wall. Combs then stepped forward and vaginally raped plaintiff while Carter and that woman, Celebrity B, watched. Those allegations are bad, but now new allegations by the attorney Tony Busby, a twist in the case. Allegations of bribery against Jay Z. Defendants have conspired. This is what Busby is accusing Jay Z and his company of. Have conspired to obstruct justice by engaging shadowy operatives to illegally seek out more than 24 current and former clients of the Busby law firm to convince those clients to bring frivolous cases against the Busby law firm. Defendant Rock Nation is financing the effort. Its attorneys, Marcy Croft and Quinn Emanuel, are orchestrating the effort. In some cases, defendants' agents pretend to work for the state of Texas and have flashed fake badges. Here's a transcript from an alleged audio recording. What we're trying to do is we are trying to put this thing together for the company that we're working for. We could get you paid. You could get money right soon, you know. We gave this kid $1,000 to start yesterday just to get him on the right path. At the end of the day, this is going through the courts. Busby is getting sued. What a twist. Let's bring back in our think tank, Daryl Cohen, Meg Strickler, Charles Middlestat. All right, first of all, flashing fake badges.
This is why I don't do civil law. That is just crazy. That is just crazy. These lawsuits always have all kinds of crazy allegations on both sides. And so you have the ones with Busby alleging a lot of things with a lot of victims, and then they come back and say that they're trying to, that he's also
But
saying...
they're going after Busby now.
No,
Busby is in the crosshairs of Jay Z and his crew.
But Busby's alleging that they're going after him to discredit him. And like you said, having fake Texas badges. If that is true, that's horrendous. But the question is, it's criminal.
It sounds criminal, right, with the badges?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
It's impersonating an officer. It's absolutely criminal if that's what is going on. I mean, you have a battle of what are now heavyweights. I mean, by all accounts, Busby is considered a heavyweight now. He represents 120 plaintiffs against one of the wealthiest, most famous men in this country, right, and entertainers in this country. So he's become a heavyweight, however you want. And now you have, on the other side, you have Jay Z, who is, fighting for his reputation, fighting for his career. I mean, these are obviously very, very serious allegations. But if this stuff is actually going on, I mean, that's pretty serious.
Do you feel the fleas? They're down with the dogs that have fleas, and the fleas have gotten everywhere. That's what I hear. What I haven't heard yet is what the other side is going to say, what this lawyer is going to do to defend himself or to discredit the people that are trying to discredit him.
It can never end, right? It's like an endless cycle.
It's a numbers game.
Bring back the soap operas.
Yes.
It's a numbers game. So the weight of Busby's case involves this 120 plaintiffs against Diddy, right? It's that old saying, you can kill each one off, figuratively, not literally.
Right.
One at a time, but eventually you're going to drown in dead bodies, right? You could discredit all 120, but eventually you're going to drown in dead bodies, and that's a losing proposition. So that's why it's so overwhelming. And so the only thing you can do, and this is obviously different than Jay Z's issue with Busby, but the only thing you can do is come out fighting.
Yeah, and do you think we're going to see more of this, of the lawyers being, I'm suing you on behalf of my client, but then the person who's being sued is coming after the lawyer?
Let's hope not.
Well, we're talking about
I've never seen this before.
We're talking about
really.
lawsuits. That's not really what we're talking about. When is the money going to run out? If P. Diddy runs out of assets, then the court runs out of cases.
I mean, look, we've seen a real shift in this country. We've seen a lot of behavior become normalized, where your best defense is a good offense. Suddenly you just villainize everyone, and it's a shiny object. It detracts from the real issue.
So do you think Jay Z can separate himself from Diddy?
He's going to try, but he's not going to be able to. There's way too much. They're too close. So you're going to be guilty by association, if nothing else.
There are two no's. There's the K-N-O-W and the N-O. And I say N-O. He cannot separate himself. He can never separate himself enough to make himself a good guy again.
Agreed.
All right. Big thanks. Charles Middlestadt, Meg Strickler, Daryl Cohen. Great to have you here. Great insight and perspective. When we return, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, did Corey Richins poison her husband, Eric? Did she take the life of the father of her 3 little boys? If so, was she inspired by her own mother? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board, and what do we have? New charges against this woman, one of the scariest killers I've ever covered. Taylor Schabusiness out of Wisconsin. There she is making some faces in court. Dangerous. She engaged in sex with her victim, then killed him. His body was still there. Then she sexually assaulted his corpse, cut off his head, left it in a bucket in his mother's basement. That's who she is. Well, she's facing new charges now, battery of a prison sergeant after faking an injury, going to see the nurse, and then getting the nurse out of the way and going after that sergeant who ended up getting injured. Let's take a look at what she did to her own lawyer at one point.
Stop it. Stop it.
My guess is this is not the last of Taylor Schabusiness that we'll hear about from time to time as she serves the rest of her life behind bars. And now with these new charges, additional time to her already long sentence. All right, folks, I need you to take a look at your television screens because we have a missing child who needs your help. This is Kays Benjamin Fowler. Kays has been missing since December 10th from Greenville, Ohio. Kays is just 16 years old, so take a look at his picture, at his photo. And this is what you need to do. If you see Kays, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. You can call 911, you can call 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Greenville Police Department in Ohio. That phone number is on our screen right now. Let's see if we can get Kays to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.